you need to keep in mind that the advice of solve your own itch is not the silver bullet. Like
Mm,
there are a few other principles that I would highly recommend following. Um, yes, first of all, solve your own thing. Another one is do that fast. And maybe a third principle is keep your expectations low. Like when you're solving your problem, don't think that, by solving it and putting your solution out there in the world, that it will be like $1 billion business overnight. Very likely it won't. Um, so having a few of those principles and a few of those understanding, like you will be
mhm.
able to kind of solve your own problem. And it doesn't mean that, not necessarily crypto jobs will be like, my life's work. Maybe it will. I don't know.
It's DeAndre here, and this is the Pioneers Show. The show where we talk with innovators, makers, entrepreneurs, basically people who are trailing their own trails and creating their own lives, so that we all can learn how to work on our own lives. And after week hiatus, we are back. If this is your first time here, thank you for downloading and listening, and I appreciate you taking the time to hear this episode. This is your home now. Subscribe and enjoy these conversational goodies. And if you're a repeat listener, welcome back. This is episode 15, and I'm your host, André Delpkerk. You can find me at It's DeAndre on Twitter and on Instagram, as well as the show at Pioneers Show and Instagram as well. You should definitely check it out. We've been really upping the quantity and quality of the content we put up on Instagram. Go there and tell us what you think. In this week's episode with us, we have Raman Shalupau. Raman is the first solopreneur I've had a chance to talk with, the first maker. For those who are not familiar with the term, a maker is someone who develops, or in this case, makes products, frameworks, or commercial strategies in order to tackle a problem. Now, you might wonder how this is different from a startup. Well, most startups, for as fast as they are, there are usually multiple people. Makers are usually, like Raman said, 1 or 2 man bands, which makes this extremely nimble. Raman is the founder of Crypto Jobs List, a job board for blockchain opportunities. Not only tackled an industry that it's been growing tremendously in the past 24 months, but also this came as an opportunity to Raman when he himself was looking for a job in the space and didn't find any good place to apply for these positions. I really enjoy talking with Raman, or K Sator on Twitter, and I really hope you enjoy listening to us as well. Without any further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Raman. Welcome, Raman. Welcome to the Pioneer Show. How are you, man?
All right, pretty good. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited finally.
No. Thank you. It was been a kind of a long time coming already. We've been talking on Twitter for quite a while. So K Sator.
Yeah, Saitor, KS. Yes, correct. Saitor.
K Saitor. K-S-A-I-T-O-R. We've been talking quite a while on Twitter lately. First thing, and this is the first thing that I'm asking. You were in Dubai recently, right?
Yeah, I've been spending about a month in Dubai, chilling out there, exploring the local culture, and now I'm back in Bali for another month or two.
So, for people who don't know who you are, care to make a presentation?
Sure. So, hey everyone, I'm Raman. I run a Crypto Jobs List. It's like a #1 job board for blockchain companies. And kind of by trade, I'm a software engineer, entrepreneur, maker of things. Yeah.
I think, and to take on just that last thing, you're a maker, and I think that the maker area, it's lately very romanticized. I believe that a lot of people love the maker movement.
Yeah, I think it's been quite a recent thing as well. I agree on that. I think it's mainly powered by the fact that like a lot of, especially people coming from software engineering background, they feel quite empowered that they can bootstrap a whole project and start making money, start generating some revenue on their own without like having to raise like a financing rounds. And they can do it as a, in a one-man show or one-woman show, or as a two-man team. And kind of the mentality, the principles are, you really like, have an idea, you solve your own problem, you launch fast, validate, and try to kind of charge money from kind of day one. But I think it's like a relatively recent thing.
Yeah, but I think it's a very, very interesting thing for people who don't know necessarily engineering. That might be a very harder goal to reach. But I think that the maker movement embodies the independence that people sometimes strive to.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't think it's only inclusive of engineers, because like a lot of non-engineering people try to build projects, and I think today it's easier than ever. You can like combine a lot of tools into just Zapier integrations and you'll have a simple prototype that it can actually start charging money for. Like, you can have Zoho forms, or like, Wufu forms that support like Stripe payments, and you can integrate it with some Zapier, and like have a whole flow that basically delivers some simple value proposition of your application.
So for people who don't know, let's take it a step easier. Zapier is an automation tool, right? It's an automation between services.
That's right.
And Zoho Forms and Wuhu Forms that you said? Wufu Forms are, from the name I will assume, form companies that allow you to correct like a type form, Google form structure where you can have payment by the end.
Yeah, Typeform is a good example as well.
Even though Typeform just had this major data breach recently.
Oh, right. I didn't care about that.
Oh, now you know. Tell me something. Tell me something. How did you get started with the maker movement? I assume you didn't. So you studied engineering, right?
I studied in school. I studied engineering and business administration, and then for many years I've been like professionally working as a software engineer.
But were you working as a software engineer to be able to pay for your own projects on the side, or were you working as a passion, something you were doing, getting paid for it as a normal job, but as a software engineer?
Yeah, I think like the way I was always been interested in technology, and I eventually got a job in several tech companies where I was like developing products and services. And I think like maybe 3-4 years ago, I think startup movement started way before that, but kind of I got intrigued by the idea of having my own company, having my own product and service. And I did that for a little bit of time, but doing the actual, like, kind of following the actual maker movement is fairly recent. I'm not sure. It's like there's a probably thin line between startups and maker movement. The lot of principles are very similar. A lot of mentality and values are very similar about building a product and launching it. But maker movement is something very nimble and young still.
Is there anyone in this movement that you kind of look up to? There are two names that I usually follow on Twitter that I found always very interesting in reading their tweets. It's Peter Levels.
Yeah, well, Peter Levels is one of the kind of main leaders of this thing. Yeah. Who else is there? Like, there is a lot of pretty huge community around Veep Chat, VIP. It's like work in progress chat. It's a Telegram group where a lot of people kind of hold each other accountable, and they ship new features and projects every day. Product Hunt and a community on Product Hunt is pretty powerful and pretty inspiring, where people launch projects all the time. Who else is there in this movement? There's Mr. Pugs. There's Andrei Asimov, friend of mine as well. Quite a lot.
I know that Ben Tossell, former community for Product Hunt and then AngelList is also doing something quite recently. I know that then there's this guy. I don't even know if it's a guy. I'm pretty sure it's a guy. That AJ, the guy from Card.
Right. That's also pretty, like, I haven't met him personally, but it's pretty impressive what he's done with Card. It's a very simple CMS and one-man team kind of product. And I think he's making revenue of that already. Good that you mentioned Ben Tossell. He recently, actually, like, a good example and inspiration for all of the listeners who are not software engineers, who are not coders. He's kind of proving the point that you can build products and startups without knowing how to code. He basically gives those lessons of how to like create a job board, create some simple website, or create some product with custom functionality without coding anything.
Yeah, for sure. I'm someone who was a part of the Nuco first proposal nice. There. I find it really interesting. I actually started developing the website for the Pioneers Show, starting using the Webflow app, because I find it really interesting. But then a friend of mine said that I could host on his WordPress server for free, so I'm pointing on to that, even though I have no idea how to use WordPress, to be honest. Okay. So going back to your roots, let's put it this way. So you were a software engineer, and what made you create Crypto Jobs List?
Funny enough, I've been looking for a job, and that was the reason why I created it in the first place. But there was a bit of a backstory behind it. Is that it was like mid last year, around August, and I was, so to say, hangover after a few other startup projects that I kind of semi-successfully launched. and we can talk about them later if you would like.
For sure.
But eventually, I was like, crypto been booming last year a lot, and I was trying to figure out what can I build with the technology, and I was like just running around for different ideas. But eventually, I realized, okay, like I'm sort of running out of money, and like I need to find a job, like ideally in a blockchain company. And I started applying to different positions in different exchanges and companies. And I thought, okay, why not? Build a job board? Like, as you mentioned, a lot of people following Peter Levels, and I was like, oh, he runs a pretty successful job board as well. Like, why not? Like, there is a precedence that this can be monetized. So I thought that, okay, let's give it a try. And I actually launched it with the expectations of that's gonna fail, and that's gonna be yet another one of those projects that not gonna succeed. And because I was having such a low expectations, I kind of decided not to spend too much time on building it, and I just basically coded up in a weekend. It was 28th of September, I probably vividly remember. And basically launched it and started populating with a few jobs and showing to a few friends of mine. And then eventually another friend of mine decided to post it on Product Hunt. And from then on, it sort of like took off, and more people started posting jobs themselves. Shortly after, a few companies been asking, okay, how much is it? And that was a good sign that people are really willing to pay for that. And at that point, I started kind of automating payments processes and kind of taking it a bit more seriously. And at the time, I think I've been working on a few like consulting projects, also as like a software engineer. And I decided to like go onto Crypto Jobs List mostly full time. That's a short starter story.
So just to cut up that in some pieces as well. So you were looking for a job in the crypto space because, and I'm sorry if you're going to repeat this, but you were interested in the crypto space because of all the hype, or were you genuinely interested in the technology behind? There's no problem in saying the money, once again, just curiosity.
Yeah, I'm not that crazy motivated by money, to be frank. I was more interested about technology, and I just wanted to work on any crypto project that's out there and just contribute and learn. And I kind of had this realization because I remember many years ago when I was starting, like I'm a JavaScript engineer, and I remember back in 2011 or 12, Node.js was just getting released. I think it was like one of the early years of Node.js. And I was not really aware what's going on. I was just like, okay, started coding it. And later on, I realized that it's like such a huge community out there. And later on, I was helping organize JavaScript conferences in Asia. And I was realizing that this is actually like even earlier days for crypto, especially on the engineering side. I would say it's really phenomenal about the state of this technology is that technically it's very, very promising, but at the same time, it's overhyped business-wise. And a lot of engineers, they kind of being pushed back by this like smell of too many salesy people and too many like scams going on. So, and they also, it's very hard to switch from kind of your thinking about web services and kind of consumer apps or SaaS apps into thinking about a kind of decentralized economy, issuing tokens and building decentralized applications, like and even having a motivation to build something decentralized. It's not very intuitively clear to most developers why they should be doing that.
For sure. I think one of so I've also worked in the blockchain space, and I think that for me personally, it was never about the money directly related, because I think that the money is still a long ways out to the real product. It's just that the technology underlying the whole process and the whole products, I think it's very enticing and very interesting to know more about it. And that's why I also wanted to ask. So, and to go back again, so you were looking for a job in the crypto area, you didn't find anything, or didn't you find any centralized place, and looked for inspirations on other sites, for example, Peter Levels, like you said, and then you thought, okay, let's build one. Is that it?
Yes.
So I think the scratch your own itch kind of people, I think those are the main guys they're the group of people that I kind of admire the most. It's the ones that have the technical ability, or I would even say the audacity to challenge something that, because it's like that, you would assume, or a normal person would assume, this is the way that is. It will never change. But you guys are the ones, and in this case, you are the one that said, no, 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 no. Something has to change. So what was the drive behind it? Was it literally scratching your itch as a database for yourself? Or you thought that because there were already examples of job boards working, you decided to go on and build something as a business, even though you already thought it was bound to fail?
Right. I think it's both. It's one of them is scratching your own itch, but then kind of building that product that scratches your own itch, but also opening it up to the public so that everyone can use it and benefit from the same solution that you created for yourself. It doesn't. You should not be doing that with expectations that kind of it's going to be overnight success. You're going to be next Mark Zuckerberg. That's all BS. You should not have those expectations. Just kind of. And I used to when I was younger, I definitely did those mistakes. I was like, okay, this new project going to be the next big thing. But I think the solutions and approaches that typically work are those where you're actually solving your own problem. You don't really care about how it's being solved. And that's why I want to strongly encourage those people who are not coders not to feel left out. They should feel empowered as well, because there are so many tools out there that you can assemble and glue things together and solve their problem. But kind of it's again, back to your question, it's a combination of several things. Is like solving my own problem, opening it up to the public so other people can use it, and kind of gluing a business model on top of it, a very simple business model.
And then start making money out of it. So is Crypto Jobs List a one-man band, like you said?
It is pretty much one-man show. I got to be honest, though, that there are quite a huge kind of following and a few people who I talk to on day-to-day basis who help me out and give me tips on SEO and some technical issues that I sometimes face. I'm trying to hire a few people who will be helping me out with engineering tasks. Not because I cannot do them myself, obviously, but it's because I need to do more things as well. And I need to be doing some business development and kind of higher level kind of strategy, what to do next. Yeah,
I think that's a great idea. So I think for anyone out there that's looking for a job or wants to post a job in the crypto area, I think Crypto Jobs List is a great tool and a great place to go, because I think if you're looking for one specific area, I think Crypto Jobs List has the right thing for the right people that are looking for that specific job. And I think you managed to create, interestingly enough, for the decentralized world, a centralized platform for people to find jobs to work on the decentralized world.
Yeah, that's true. That's sort of funny. On a lot of conferences, people ask me, "Oh, is it built with blockchain, etc.?" And funny enough, I proudly say that no, it's not a D app. It's not built on Ethereum yet.
Is that the idea eventually?
Certain things might make sense to be decentralized, especially those things around trust, or certain things around escrow, like proving that a certain employer has certain funds to pay employee, or the other way around, proving that a certain talent has the skills or has certain abilities, and doing that in a decentralized way might make sense. But during job recommendation, job search, I would not kind of put that on the blockchain yet, just because it doesn't make any end user benefit.
Taking a huge step back from Crypto Jobs List, we'll go back to here. You said that you had previously semi-successful startups. Care to give some information on those?
Sure. So I think one of the companies that I launched around 3-4 years ago. I lost track of time, sorry.
No problem.
But I think one of the biggest kind of failures and lessons learned, a lot of lessons learned, was an events software company that I launched about 3 years ago. And that was kind of the classical startup journey where I had this grandiose idea, huge ambition, raised some money, assembled a team, and we were building a software for events managers to manage their events, to better understand their audience. And it was primarily targeted at nightlife venues.
Nice.
and events. Yeah, I was based in Singapore at the time, and yeah, and I think we went through a few pivots. Initially, it was just a SaaS product where event organizers and venues could track their audience. Eventually, it pivoted into kind of more of a social app. It had this like backend CMS system where event organizers would track everyone, and it had this like Instagram like event discovery app. Yeah, and that was quite an interesting journey. Um, yeah.
And is that specific company still up, or did you close it?
So recently I sunsetted it because it was like very expensive to maintain the infrastructure. We developed way too much software there, and it was a bit hard to keep monetizing it. The market was like smaller than I expected, and yeah, and I think like kind of we're trying to do too many things at once. One of them was to kind of satisfy a lot of event organizers, and event industry is very cutthroat. All event organizers, they have very different event flow, and
Mm-hmm.
they, because they're it's kind of especially nightlife. It's a creative industry. They all want to be different and creative. The way they check people into the venue, the way their venue and their event progresses is very different. And it's very hard to build tools that kind of satisfy all needs. It's very like, different venues are different within one city,
Mm-hmm.
and they're even more different in between different countries. Like, for example, in US, if you're going to nightclub, you need to go through like a few levels of like, identity checks. They want to ensure that you're above drinking age and things like that. And this the same software solution would not be necessarily that applicable that were successful in, for example, Singapore. It's not necessarily going to be successful in Indonesia or successful in Europe or in US. That was one part of it, and another difficulty was the kind of social aspect. It's really hard to make a high quality social app, and where you're basically competing with like monsters like Facebook, Instagram, and a few others.
Before we go on, you talked about way too much development of things.
That's right.
Care to go a little bit deeper on that?
Definitely. So all the founders of that company, it used to be called RSUPD, um, and all of us were technical. And my background was I'm an engineer by trade, even though I try to do more of the business type of things. But everyone else in the team were engineers, and especially high profile engineers, they pride themselves because that's what they've been doing all their life, and that's what they've been really good at, and that's what made them earn a pretty high. If you're a good engineer, you earn a lot. So it's very hard to let go of that ego and your ability to deliver perfect code. Everything is like linted and tested, and you have this like magnificent infrastructure that scales. But most of the time when you're validating a business, when you're a startup early stage, your users do not care about whether it's a Python, JavaScript, PHP, whether it's coded or not coded at all,
Mm-hmm.
coded by monkeys, coded by PhDs. No one really cares early days. In the end, customers want the solution to their problem, whether it's like a utility problem they want to get from point A to point B, whether it's like entertainment problem, they're just bored and they want a game. They just want a solution to their problem, and they don't care how that problem is being delivered, as far as is being delivered, as often as possible, and kind of as good as possible. So yeah, we just got like really carried away by building a lot of things, trying to solve too many things that event organizer asked us to do,
Mm-hmm.
and we tried to implement different features, and instead of kind of talking more to customers and trying to understand better what they actually need, and trying to kind of be more realistic about whether the product that we're building will have a market success and what are the kind of possible outcomes.
So if you were starting today, what would you say to Raman a couple of years ago?
Um, I would probably say the same thing that I'm saying today, like solve your own problem. And there is more to this saying than it's simpler it's harder than it seems. It sounds simple, but you just really need to pay attention to the problems that you have on a daily basis. And discovering events is not necessarily the hardest problem out there. It's not like life and death thing. Oh, if I miss out on this event, I'll be screwed. Very rarely that's the case. Um, yeah, I would say to be more realistic and to solve my own problem that is like really a problem, not just like a seems to be a cool thing to do.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that makes total sense. Another
say
question
that
I also
solve
think
your
that's
own
really
itch,
interesting is that,
and we already talked about it, but I think that a solve your own itch can also be very dangerous. I believe that you may be one of the few people that has that itch, or even if more people have that itch, and this is me assuming, once again, I'm not saying that this is the question, this is more of a intellectual part, is I assume that many people might not find that itch payable or something that might bring you money. Would you still do it if it was not something that delivered?
I would do it. Yeah, I would do it. But you need to keep in mind that the advice of solve your own itch is not the silver bullet. Like there are a few other principles that I would highly recommend following. Yes, first of all, solve your own thing. Another one is do that fast. And maybe a third principle is keep your expectations low. Like when you're solving your problem, don't think that, by solving it and putting your solution out there in the world, that it will be like $1 billion business overnight. Very likely it won't. So having a few of those principles and a few of those understanding, like you will be able to kind of solve your own problem. And it doesn't mean that, not necessarily crypto jobs will be like even my life. Even like maybe it will. I don't know. After like several months after it got profitable, I still was thinking about, okay, what are the kind of the maximum levels that this can grow to? Should I be devoting whole of my time to, or should I be devoting only like part time and start launching new projects? And those thoughts and those ideas and considerations, I think they're kind of, I would say it's a more mature version of me. And because it's very easy to get carried away. You saw some sign of success and like, okay, this is going to be like, Facebook trajectory. And no, you should be like kind of, sober and objective and realistic and trying to evaluate, okay, maybe even if you're having like some 5-digit MRR, not necessarily it will go
MRR
to,
for people, sorry to interrupt you, but for people who don't know,
monthly recurring revenue.
Okay.
So that's like a metric that is usually treasured in startup world, especially in software as a service companies. It's basically recurring revenue that sort of happens on autopilot because the same customers are using your software continuously and paying you, of course.
Do you have any framework to validate your ideas usually? Do you have follow any kind of a framework already defined by other people? You created your own framework. What do you do to validate your ideas?
Yeah, lately I've been actually thinking a lot about that question, just for myself. How do I be more efficient and validating my own ideas? And I did not come with any sexy answer to this question yet. I think over time it becomes sort of intuition. You do that like after you launch, and again, like my events company is still not my second company. I think I launched maybe 3 or 4 projects before that. And like you kind of realize what's a good match for you personally as a founder. You understand your strengths, your weaknesses, and after a while you'll be able to kind of understand whether a certain idea has a market potential, whether a certain idea is executable by you. Can you do it yourself? Can you assemble a team around it? And how does your strengths and weaknesses fit into that specific idea, right? Peter Thiel, for example, is a founder of PayPal. Yeah, he's not necessarily the best person to run SpaceX, right? And Elon Musk might necessarily be the best person to run Facebook, right? Because they have different mindsets. One is more physicist, another one, Mark Zuckerberg, has a good understanding of human psychology. And so yeah, over time, you kind of let's go back to earth to like solo nimble founders. Like you kind of start to understand after a while what's your strength, whether you're good at like highly technical products that people need, or whether you're good at like just doing some simple product that, but you really kind of hype out the crap out of it and make everyone hyped and make everyone buy the product. But yeah, I think the important thing to understand, like whether a certain product going to take off or not, valuable thing to have is to have an audience, right? And audience means a lot of people who follow you either like on Facebook, Twitter. Maybe you have a podcast, and a lot of people know you from a podcast. Maybe you have a blog, or you some kind of YouTube channel, and you have a lot of following, people who are engaging with you, and that's actually a really valuable asset to have. Sometimes even more valuable than being a software engineer who's able to produce great code. Because if you have a following, you can, hey guys, I have this idea. What do you guys think? And maybe you can even like have a landing page where you right away ask for a credit card, right? That's a really good sign that people really want to pay for your idea, for your service, right? Before your even service is even built, right? So for example, if you, Andre, decide to like build a product, and if you do not know how to code, like my 2 cents of advice would probably be just have your idea mentioned on your Twitter or on your podcast, or on some other channel like YouTube. Have a very super simple web page that clearly mentions what the value proposition is, and then have a simple credit card like fill-in form. It doesn't have to actually capture the credit card, right?
But
you should capture
just get metrics, just getting metrics that some people might be able to pay or might be willing to pay for this.
Yeah, if people are entering their credit card, that's already a huge sign that people are willing to pay for it. And yeah, don't be afraid to specify the price for what you're building, even if you think that it's like should be free, because a lot of people out there, they think everyone got so spoiled by like Gmail, Facebook, and all other apps that goes out for free. But people do not realize that the way those companies are making money is that they're huge, they have huge network effects, and they're charging millions in advertising services to a ton of companies and big brands all around the world. Yeah. And for probably like another example of kind of product validation lessons is kind of in between my kind of failed startup, RSCPD and Crypto Jobs List, I had another kind of idea that I spent maybe 3 months validating. It was called Read by Humans. And the idea was, do you use Pocket, by the way? Pocket extension?
Pocket. Sometimes I usually just don't close the tab.
Right, right. So basically the idea was like, it's a Pocket-like extension. You browse the internet, you see an article, you click on this extension, and it takes the article and it kind of sends it to this network of professional voice actors who narrate your article and turn it into a podcast, right?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so the idea was super sexy. Like everyone liked it. I think I was doing YC startup school, Y Combinator startup school, last year as well with this idea, and everyone loved it. It was like kind of everyone wants to have this magic that you browse this like super long New York Times article. You don't have time to read it. You just save it into your Read by Humans app. And on the way to work or while commuting, you just listen professionally narrated article instead of listening like to a computer generated, text to speech, robotic voice, right? And
even though if you listen to if you saw the presentation from Google, that's starting to get a little bit more creepy, right?
Oh yeah, like it's really impressive what they're able to do with TTS, text to speech synthesis. It's really impressive. But yeah, so the way I was trying to validate this idea, and I, kind of myself 3 years ago, I'd probably like right away dive into building like a mobile app that will help you listen to those audio recordings, and kind of start developing this like marketplace for narrators, etc., and kind of make the mistake of over engineering. But instead, I've just had a very simple landing page I started narrating articles myself and published them on SoundCloud, so that people can, and I would just like send them to people and ask them for feedback. And in the end of the day, I think eventually I added like Stripe payment form, and I think after 3 months, only 1 or 2 people gave their credit card information out of 200 really engaged subscribers that I had, which is like less than 1% conversion rate, which is not very good. 0.5% conversion rate, it's pretty bad. Even in like huge gaming companies, like I don't know, Candy Crush, the conversion rate is like maybe like 1 or 2%. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that some friends of mine from like big gaming companies, they mentioned that like conversion rates are very small, but like those people who pay, they pay a lot.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like I felt that this idea, right, by humans was not really apt for me, because like I wanted to bootstrap a product. I didn't want to raise a ton of financing, and it was pretty clear that less than 0.5% is willing to give their credit card. 1% out of 200 willing to give their credit card to pay $9. That's not gonna, I would not be able to grow that business, even though the idea is super sexy and kind of seemingly a lot of people wanted that to exist. But they did not vote with dollars. Exactly. Like if you say that, that's a really good idea, that or someone gives you feedback that this is a good idea, I would want this to exist. This is typically bullshit. Am I allowed to swear?
Sure. No worries. I've already said fuck, I think 3 times, so don't worry.
All right, cool. But what do you really want to test is whether they are voting with their dollars, right? If they're really willing to pay, like attach a PayPal form, attach a Stripe or some other checkout form, some way that people can vote with their dollars, and don't be afraid of doing that. So that's like I think one of the best ways to validate whether what you're doing makes sense. I think that's like a bit more realistic way of doing.
And nowadays, when you started doing crypto jobs, nowadays already a few months ago, but when you started doing crypto jobs list, how did you control yourself for not falling in the over-engineering trap?
That's a very good question. Yeah, as mentioned, I was really expecting that this project is gonna have the same kind of fate as my previous ones. So I just did. So typically what I do is like I will set up like a fancy pants kind of React project with like some fancy API, etc. But this time I just copy pasted from some other project that I was working on previously, some kind of boilerplate code and really jQuery spaghetti code that it's probably the most shameful code that I ever written. But I wrote it in like 2 days, and I made it work. Oh, I think another good example of like being scrappy is like for example, for people to post jobs, I did not even build like a form. I just used Google Forms, and Google Forms, people would enter the details about the job that they're posting on the job board on a Google form, and then Google form will ping Zapier, and Zapier will make a post request to my backend, right? So that kind of saved me maybe a day or so of designing and building a HTML form. And software engineers out there who are listening, I'm sure they can sympathize, because building forms is like the worst thing in web dev world, because you need to do validation and ensure that they look good and they look good on responsive, etc. So basically, I kind of tried to not code as much as possible and just use existing tools out there like Google Forms.
And like Zapier, like we said. So from what I've been seeing a lot from makers and solopreneurs, solo founders, is that Zapier and IFTTT, so if this then that, are tools that I see everybody loves them. Everybody.
Yeah, because they save ton of time, and sometimes it's easier. I would say it's like wiser, even if you're a really experienced engineer. For a lot of things, it's better. You're gonna be better off not writing additional line of code, because additional line of code is additional risk, an additional risk for bugs to creep in and that you need to maintain, right? And there is no you should not have any pride in how many lines of code you've written. It's more about whether the solution works and whether it solves a problem or not. So like even today, I try to automate a lot of things with Zapier, if this then that, and Buffer, by the way, as well. Like day one, I probably kind of after a few months, I kind of fall back into my trap and started over engineering certain things. I got to admit that. Especially around social media automation. But now I'm actually realizing, I can probably delete this whole chunk of code and replace that with the Buffer integration or with the Zapier integration that will do like a whole sequence of things, and that will just result in more maintainable code, less headache. There are going to be fewer things to break, because people who are running like Buffer, Zapier, if this then that, they're, those companies are already in their millions of revenue. They have huge teams, they have DevOps, they have like testing units, and
they're already making the work for you, basically.
Yeah, their software not going to break, like very rarely, but 99% of chance they're not going to break. And your code in your startup is probably going to break, and it's actually should break. If it's not breaking, you're probably not moving fast enough.
Okay. Funny thing, I actually did an interview yesterday where we talked about Buffer, but if you're interested about social media and content automation, there's actually one tool that I can recommend to you. There's this tool that I've been using here on the Pioneers Show that, I mean, I have no financial interest on this, so you know that it's completely uninterested. Besides that, are you paying for Buffer, or you're just using the free version?
I'm not paying for Buffer at the moment, but I'm willing to do that in upcoming month or so.
I can send you a link of this startup that I met actually through Product Hunt upcoming, if I recall, called Holly Social, or okay. Choose Holly. I don't remember the exact name, but the guys are using like an AWS system, so you pay per usage and not necessarily a fixed amount. But basically, if I recall correctly, I think you can post up to 3,000 things per month until you get to the cost of Buffer. It's unbelievable. I can send you the link, and I can talk with the founder, because I've been talking with the founder quite recently, and I think that it's a good alternative if you're into not paying huge sums of money. But while you're going for free, stay with Buffer or even Hootsuite or any other automation tool.
Right. Yeah, I think like one of the things that kind of happened lately is that I stopped kind of many years back. I was kind of trying to save every penny, even when I was like earning kind of substantial money with doing software engineering consulting or doing full-time software engineering jobs. When you start charging other people for your product and service, you kind of start appreciating other products and services that charge money, and you actually starting to realize the value. Like, okay, this service costs, like service X costs $15 a month, and you're like, okay, how much productive are you going to be after paying for this?
Oh yeah,
how
definitely.
much headache you're going to save? And this calculation suddenly going to start making more sense to you, and you'll be more willing to part with the money. So I think one of the good things that happened to me is I became more open and kind of more open to paying for services in other apps. I started building one myself.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I just mentioned that one because I actually pay for it, but I pay a few cents per month, because the amount of posting that I actually prepare myself is not that big. But it was just a thing. Another question. So for people out there, let's start with first the engineers. People are leaving engineering school, so finishing a CS or a mechanical engineering that have coding experience. What would you tell them if they're interested in this maker community, maker idea, this independent life, or let's call it location independent living? What would be the best tools or recommendations you'd have for technical people?
Wow. Okay. Probably not the answer that you're expecting me to give, but I would actually not recommend doing that right away, right out of school. I would, unless you really have unless you're probably in Silicon Valley and your app is already have like millions of users and you have like a Reddit trajectory. But everything what happens in Silicon Valley is it's their own like world that is very different from realities of other other countries, including like prominent tech hubs like Berlin or Singapore or Hong Kong
Hmm.
or London. So I would, for those people with engineering education who are tempted to do like digital nomad thing or doing being a maker, um, do that, but don't dive into that right away.
Hmm.
I would suggest with kind of having different experiences, especially early on in your career. Work for a larger company. Do try to sort of start up with your friends. Having a team. I strongly believe, like even though I'm mostly like a solo maker right now,
Hmm.
I do still have a preference of having a team, and that's what I've been working on a few past months is trying to get more people around me to join me on this journey. I try to do that gradually, but it's definitely more valuable and more important to have a co-founder or two co-founders, and have experience working in different organizations. So I think it's better for engineers out there to first experience what's it like to work in a like small company, to work in
Hmm.
a large company, as well as how to work for themselves and how to validate their own ideas if they really, really want to build a product on their own. And yeah, you just need to be true to yourself and don't kind of dive into something that seems to be hip because today is maybe blockchain is hip, makers are hip, a startup is maybe not hip, or something else. And those the waves then come and go.
Hmm.
But you need to stay true to yourself up until, for example, up until 2017, 2016, cryptocurrencies were not hip at all. But those who were there from day one, those people who were following Bitcoin from 2008 or they joined in 2012, 13, those are the ones who kind of gained the most out of it. So I think my piece of advice for those who are technical, again, to just to build, craft your your skill, improve your skill, and yeah, eventually things will fall into place.
Oh yeah, no, I think even though you're saying that, I was probably not expecting that. I was hoping you would say that because I think that one of the things that a lot of people with or without technical skills, anyone who feels like they have the audacity to even say to the market that they don't know how to do or they should do something better, I think that they should build something, but not make that their living right away. They should definitely work on their skills. And if that makes them work for a corporate or a startup or whatever it is, I just think that skills are more important in the beginning of a career. Right now, I'm the beginning of my career, and I know that skills are more important than any kind of cash I will have in the bank.
That's definitely true.
One last question that I have for you before we go on to the lightning round.
Oh
Um,
wow.
you as a solopreneur, you already said that you had previous startups. Was it always there, the momentum or the wit or the will to build products? Was it always there as you were a kid? Were you trying to craft something together, or when do you remember having it inside of your start building things for yourself?
Right, right. I don't think that doing startups specifically was like right from the start, but I do remember when I was growing up, I was really wanted to express myself. So I did like some street art, did some graffiti. I was doing some music production
Cool.
when I was in my like 16, 17 years old. And I was into music for quite a long time actually. But kind of professionally, I always been building and kind of a natural, it's very easy if you're a developer you will sooner or later end up on like Hacker News, which is run by Y Combinator, which for those who don't know, it's a Silicon Valley based startup incubator. It's like Harvard or Stanford for startups.
It's startup
Uh,
incubator and accelerator, right? It's
yeah,
both
yeah,
things, yeah.
yeah. And like, yeah, sooner or later, you will kind of end up being in a startup, working for one or thinking about one. Um, yeah, so like I think kind of my first experience with startups was like still in college when I was doing some internships for companies in US. And I think in college I also did some food delivery startup, which I think we did not amount to much. We did not even like ship or release the product. We did not deliver anything really. But it was still, I think, those early seeds of kind of building something on your own and maybe striving for some independence and striving for not having a boss. I don't have anything against not having a boss, by the way. Like if you have a good leadership is fantastic. Like if you have a great person to work with, that's kind of can groom you a lot and teach you a lot. Yeah, but yeah, back to your question, whether I had it from early days. Yeah, I guess, I mean, seems like a relatively kind of creative expression. You need to find your form, whether it's, music, whether it's coding, whether it's like, sales. People express themselves in different ways.
Okay, one last question, actually, that midway through the answer, I remember another thing. And this might be very ignorant, and I'm sorry for anyone from this continent specifically that's going to be listening, but why Singapore or Bali? What? Because I know that a lot of people, I've never been there, so I might be even saying for lack of knowledge, but why is the maker community usually so obsessed? I won't say obsessed, but so lovable of places like Indonesia and Singapore and Southern Asian countries?
Right. That's a very good question. First of all, I would like to make a small correction. I don't think Singapore is such a maker-friendly place because Singapore is very expensive. But the reason why people love Asia, Southeast Asia, places like Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Bali, is because they're cheap. And they're cheap. They have good internet, and it's summer all year round. So if you're starting out like a high risk business on your own, keeping your costs low is one of the most important things that you can do, because that's gonna help you like extend your life cycle of your products that you're starting, and you can iterate longer and further. Like in the Valley, you need like
money right away.
5K, yeah, a lot of that, and forget about even like hiring people there because they're gonna be asking for like a 5-digit monthly salary. US. In Indonesia, you can get away with, I don't know, it's pretty cheap. You probably, if you're really like saving on things, you can pretty comfortably live for $1,000 per month, which is super cheap. You can, of course, if you like fancy things, you can go indefinitely up. Actually, funny thing, I think this month I'm going to be posting on Twitter a lot of like reports of how much exactly I spend every day. So if you guys are interested, you can follow that. I'm going to be like
Sator, once again, KSAITOR.
Yeah, I think you should add it to the notes.
It will be on the show notes. Don't worry, it's always there.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll be like just giving examples of how much it costs, like my day-to-day life here, like what I spend on coffee, what I spend on like, I don't know, haircuts, motorcycle rent, etc., without filter.
That's interesting. I have a good thing that I don't no longer pay for haircuts because I shave my head, so it's easier.
Oh, right. It took me some while to register.
So let's go jump into the fire round.
Right, sure, let's do that.
So fire round.
Don't torture me.
No, don't worry. It's just a couple of questions that I'm going to be asking. You have around 1 minute to answer. That's cool?
Sure.
Okay, what's the book or 3 books that impacted you the most so far?
Right. I think one of the recent ones is Principles by Ray Dalio. He launched it like early last year. It's a really great book. It's about setting your goals and kind of setting up yourself for success in life. Really recommend it to everyone. I think, and there are a few other books that I remember that I was very impressed by them, but I don't remember exactly what took me there. So probably it's a call that I should reread them. It's 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. I think it's about like innovative ideas and how certain technologies and services kind of go from 0 to 1, like basically from non-existence to kind of almost like disrupting technology. Without the buzzwords. It's very pragmatic book. And Hard Thing About Hard Things by Horowitz.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's basically about kind of no filter stories from
bullshit,
lives
right?
of CEOs. Yeah, of CEOs and founders. And you can, like everyone who's in their first startup or second startup or maybe working for a CEO in a high growth or not high growth company, it's a really good read to understand what's going on in the head of the founder of the CEO. because in startups, everyone thinks that it's like a pyramid and the CEO is at the top. The CEO has all the freedom and all the kind of power. But I usually see it, and kind of the book demonstrates that it's the other way around. Like CEO is in the very bottom and this pyramid is on top of him, pressing on his or her shoulders, with a lot of responsibilities, and everyone's pulling in different directions. Employees want one thing, stakeholders, investors want another thing, customers might want a third thing, and you need to be considerate and kind of align the whole organization, everyone around you, to go into the right direction. So it's I think those books are pretty impressive.
They will also be linked up in the show notes. Yeah. Okay, tell me something you changed your opinion in the last 6 months.
Actually, I was in the middle of the show. I was thinking about something that I changed my opinion of, but I forgot. God, what did I change my opinion of? Did we mention anything in the show?
We mentioned a lot of things already.
Oh, we did. About validating. I don't think anything's maybe I'll tweet it out later if I remember. I will listen again to the show.
Okay,
but I don't think there was anything crazy significant.
Please tag me when you do that, because I want to see that.
Sure, I will.
Okay, so do you live by any life motto, or is there any quote that you have very present in your life whenever you wake up that you live by?
Interesting. I think I do like a lot of quotes. And I try to live by a lot of quotes. I think one of the most important ones is like, never compare yourself to others, and compare yourself
to who you were yesterday.
To your previous self. I think that's one of the main things that caused a lot of anxiety in my life previously, a lot of anger, a lot of like jealousy, because especially in the startup world, you always hear this buzz and noise around, oh, this company raised this amount of money, this people did this ICO or this IPO, this acquired by someone, and this makes you feel insecure. Or another news about, oh, this 19-year-old developed an app and sold for $1 million. If you keep up with all this news, you'll get like anxiety nonstop. Maybe listening to podcasts about successful startuppers, no matter how successful or unsuccessful they are, will make you anxious. But what's really important is comparing yourself to you yesterday rather than comparing to someone else. And I think another one, which is very kind of interesting, that I sometimes forget, but I try to remind myself about that, is this quote. I'm not sure who said that. The more uncomfortable conversations you are willing to have, the more successful you'll be.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. It's not a very popular one. I'm not sure why people are not saying that enough, but I think it's pretty true. Like, usually the conversations that are uncomfortable are the ones that are more important. Whether you're like deciding on the equity with your partner, or some other someone's getting fired, or you want to ask someone to pay you. Especially for founders, for makers, people feel insecure and uncomfortable asking for money, right? They feel uncomfortable for asking money from investors or from customers. And if you're going to do this uncomfortable thing, you probably will get ahead in life sooner. So that's a good reminder that I try to kind of remind myself more often.
Well, I love that. I love that idea. One thing that I also advise you is whenever this episode's published, listen to the previous episode, because the person that I interviewed, Nicholas, actually says that one of these mottos is put himself under constant, I won't say constant, but very frequent distress in terms of uncomfortable, because that's where he feels like he's growing the most, which I think is very valuable as well.
I agree with that. I think the important thing is to keep the balance here. You want to be in kind of an uncomfortable zone, but not in too much stretch zone, because then you will just get exhausted and anxious instead of being like driven by stress. There's comfortable stress and there's uncomfortable stress.
For sure.
So,
well, Raman, this was a great interview, great conversation. Thank you very much. If people want to meet you or find you, where can they find you? Once again?
The best way is to find me on Twitter, Exciter, and check out my site, cryptojobslist.com. But most of the time I spend on Twitter. I tweet about the company progress, about my goals, some pieces of wisdom and advice for makers, and kind of sharing my successes and failures.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Andre, as well.
It was a pleasure having you here on the Pioneers Show. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me as well.
No worries.
All right, thanks, man.
Thank you so much for plugging into this episode. I truly hope you loved this conversation as much as I did. Now, this episode was truly filled with resource goodies for everyone. From people in projects you should follow, all the way to applications and products you can already start testing and, like Raman said, gluing together so you can try and test for yourself. This and any other information that you might have missed will probably be linked up in the show notes. If you enjoyed this conversation, consider subscribing to make sure that this podcast grows and we can get some more people and help everyone be the pioneers of their lives and careers. Also, if there is any feedback that you might have for me, reach out on social media. A big thank you to Raman for his time and to Thibaut Flondlin, aka DJ Rodia. Check it on the show notes for the music of the Pioneers Show. Once again, it was really a great pleasure having you over there. Have a great time. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.